question for them. One second. Can I get one raised hand that says they can see my screen? Yay, great. Well, welcome and good morning, everyone. We are super excited to see all of your faces here this morning. It has been a whirlwind couple of months, to say the least, for North State Together, and we're super excited to be at this kickoff meeting and at this point for the tremendous opportunity that this grant is going to afford our region. So we do want to thank everyone. There were a lot of folks, some on this call, that were a part of the collaborative grant writing process. I only see a few on my screen right now, but I do see Tanya, and I know a bunch of others that are not on this call and that are on, who spent long days, nights, and weekends during the month of April to make this short turnaround possible. So thank you all. And then a huge thank you to those, everyone that's on the call and excited about what is about to happen. I'm so excited myself. So today we're going to go over quite a bit. So I want to get started and to make sure we cover everything. So we have a very short of time to go over things like who your key K-16 grant contacts are going to be. Obviously, many of you know most of us on the North State Together team because we've been working with you, but who is going to serve what role going forward with K-16 grant in particular. We'll cover that. We're going to overview the state grant. Some of you are intimately familiar with the grant application and the grant award, and some of you I know that are on the call may not be familiar with how the phase 1 award was given to Shasta College and to North State Together as convener for rollout. So we're going to just do a high-level overview of what that looks like, and then we're going to highlight the backbone role during this process. So what the North State Together team will provide for you, and then the county network terms and conditions, which most of you, I see some names that might have been on a forward list. So we'll be sure that after this meeting that we're going to not only send you the recording, the slides, but all of the documents that we refer to during this presentation, including budget templates and the latest work plans. And we'll have a shared folder as well, so to make sure that you have it in one central spot. So we'll go over the county network terms and conditions. So what you agree to in receipt of the money, as well as the all important next steps. And then we'll leave time at the end for questions and answers from all of you. We know that's many. We scheduled this meeting a little bit longer than we did for our first presentation for some of our new county networks that we're onboarding, knowing that you're in a place where you're going to have some more detailed questions. So we've left some time for that at the end. And then now I'm going to hand it over to Dr. Kevin O'Rourke. He loves when I put the doctor in front of that, to just kind of kick us off with a few words.
Thanks. Good morning, everyone. Good to see a lot of familiar faces. We appreciate your time. I think, you know, we're in a advantageous position with the original 5 counties. First, because you're already familiar with the backbone team and you understand that we'll be with you every step of the way. You've already been doing a lot of this work. You're used to some of the forms. The state gave us some new updated ones, if you will, but you know, of course, we will do on-site visits to work with you individually in the counties and help get things filled out. I think the eyes won't be as big to you all because you've been doing this as maybe it was to our previous meeting with the new 5 counties. They're looking at all these different things. So you're used to filling out a lot of this stuff for the McConnell Foundation anyway. A little bit more specifics and a little bit more restrictions around some of the spending of the dollars. Those of you that work in the school systems understand how that goes in the state of California. But one thing that I really wanted to emphasize, that Jamie will emphasize along the way, that we have been telling you, is that one of the reasons why we received this grant is because when we wrote the application for it, it was basically bragging about the work that you're already doing. So there is no urgency to recreate the wheel and start over with something, you know, as far as an objective for if you want to do that in your county, you can, but the idea is continuing to do the good work that you're doing, and then we will take that, put it in a format that will please the state. We will submit those final reports to them, and looking forward to the next 4 years. So thanks.
And I think I know most of all of you, but I'm Jamie Spillman, and I will be and continue to be the main point of contact for this grant for advancing MODOC youth and Retire Shasta, Cradle to Careers for Siskiyou, Expect More, Tehama, and our Trinity Together County networks. And we'll just go on over and do introductions and kick it off to Billy, my counterpart.
Hey everyone, good to see a lot of familiar faces again. As Jamie mentioned, I am her counterpart, but I'm the primary contact for Butte County, Glenn, Lassen, Plymouth, and Sierra counties with regard to NSD membership and the implementation of the grant. Good to see you guys all again and excited for what's to come.
And I am James Crandall. I'm the Director of Technology and Data Strategies, and I'm going to be here to support you through this process as well.
I'm Amy Speakman, and I am the Grants Fiscal Analyst for the K-16 funding, and I will be your key contact for all things budget. And I'm really looking forward to working with all of you.
And the names, probably most of you are familiar with on the side there, but Dr. Kate Mahar is going to be working closely with us when it comes to post-secondary pathway work. So she wasn't able to be here today, but she will be helping us when it comes to the implementation phase. And I anticipate a cross-county task force coming out of her work. So, and then most of you, all of you, I think, looking on this call, know Susan Stroh, our amazing, what used to be our amazing operations manager, who's now transitioned to a new role of a grant that we received for Director of Grad Partnership, which actually aligns very well with the K-16 grant. So more to come on the work that she is doing. And then we have a new operations manager, Bethany Davis, who I believe might be on this call. And you'll maybe hearing from her. And then our backbone coordinator, Arlene Miranda. So, but the main contacts you'll see on this face, are on the screen. You don't need to worry if you just shoot me an email. We'll make sure to get you in the right place and your questions answered. So now I'm going to kick it off to Billy. We always let him, because he's amazing, be the announcer of the good news. So Billy, go ahead.
Yes, I come bearing good news. Like Jamie said, most of you guys, or a lot of you guys on the call, are familiar with the phase one process of receiving this grant. Some of you may not be, so just to start at kind of the beginning and square one. So as some of you knew, on April 29th, Shasta College, in collaboration with North State Together, applied for a competitive grant through the Office of Public School Construction called Regional K-16 Education Collaboratives Grant. It was the result, $250 million being allocated to the Department of General Services, focuses on promoting education collaboratives like North State Together that support students from cradle to career. This grant has a focus of creating streamlined pathways for students from high school to college and into the workforce. And so on May 24th, we received the wonderful news that Shasta College, serving as lead agency representing our entire North State region, was awarded an $18.13 million grant, with North State Together serving as the convener to implement the grant's goals into our region. And so, put simply, we want to utilize this grant to improve the economic and personal lives of community members that live and work in the remote north. And so by leveraging our county-based cross-sector partnerships that you all make up, we intend to build inclusive, supportive pathways that respond to local needs and retain talent in our region, right? So recognizing that improving economic vitality in the North State doesn't just stop at student success or improving graduation rates, for example, but our goal is for these pathways to result in livable wages for our North State residents, and then responding to local needs by fulfilling the middle to high skill level jobs that are high in demand in our region. And so moving on to pathways, with the state's focus on building supportive pathways. And as a region, with many of you all collectively pursuing the grant opportunity, we found it strategically advantageous to focus on healthcare and education as the occupational pathways that we'll strive to implement in our region through this grant. So what does that look like practically? Well, we hope that through this grant, we can expand pathway enrollment throughout our entire region, right? All 10 of our North State Together counties. We want to increase the number of these pathways offered and thereby make them more accessible to the educational institutions within the North State. And we want to increase the number of students that are disproportionately impacted that enroll in and complete these pathways. And so what are the strategies that we intend to utilize to implement these pathways? As a reminder, these strategies are actually based on recommendations that were outlined in the Recovery with Equity report that came out February 2021, which was produced by the California College Guidance Initiative. The state selected 7 recommendations from this report. And as a requirement for funding, each funded collaborative was required to select 4 of the 7 to implement. So our first of 4, cultivating inclusive, engaging, equity-oriented learning environments. We want to retain students through inclusive supports. We want to provide high-tech, high-touch advising. And then lastly, supporting college preparation and early credit. And I want to just kind of reiterate and frame what Kevin said about focusing on our current success as a region. A major contributor of our earning this grant, right, wasn't just a promise to implement the grant's priorities into the region, but it had a lot to do with the current success that we're experiencing, right? Improving educational outcomes and improving student access to innovative ideas like this and pathways. And so our intention is to utilize our existing regional framework in conjunction with the grant resources that we've received to work with you all on identifying the needs to make the existing pathways more effective, right? It's not only reinventing the wheel, you know, some of us have new ideas to implement, that's great. But we also want to leverage the resources at hand to improve and make better and expand and scale what we're already doing, okay? And so for some of you guys, that might look differently. Retaining students through inclusive supports might look like early data warning systems. It might look like focusing on cohorts. Supporting college preparation and early credit might look like college and career expos in one county. It might look like expanding dual enrollment, but our priority is to work with you all on the priorities that you identify. And then moving on to this final graphic. This is really fun. It's really fun to share here and really fun to share in our first session, but this is essentially what you know, the future of our region looks like when it comes to working collectively to improve educational outcomes. It's a collective impact at the regional level. And so as you can see, we have many of you all, our collective impact teams that are displayed, and then we have placeholders, right, for our new developing county networks in Butte, Glen, Lassen, Sierra, and Plumas County. And so just really allowing you guys to own your own success. Our models there, increasing educational access and success through local solutions. So putting resources in you all hands, focusing on the identity, focusing on the needs you all identify, prioritize, and leveraging the resources from this grant to do so. And so passing it on to Jamie now to reiterate and highlight our role as the backbone team for you all.
Yeah, so as a backbone, you know, we'll continue to maintain that delicate balance that we have between strong leadership needed to keep you all united toward that common vision, and then that invisible behind the scenes role that we play so that each of your county networks can focus on your own successes, identifying some of the goals that you have, particularly around the K-16 grant that we'll talk about in just a minute. And so here's our commitment to you. So more than just what's on the screen, we will continue to support you in your cradle to career work that you've been doing, and all of the things that we have been providing you in the past, we will continue to provide you going forward as a backbone team. But we also, in particular with K-16 grant, have specialized backbone role where, of course, we're going to be supporting your efforts to develop and streamline equitable pathways from cradle to career, promoting those recovery with equity strategies that Billy mentioned earlier, increasing utilization of the cradle to career data system, particularly with this grant. This is californiacolleges.edu will be a big component, and we will help you every step of the way. And as you contract or maybe subgrant with particular partners like local high schools, be aware that that's going to be a component of the terms and conditions, is that they implement and begin implementing with our support the californiacolleges.edu system. Foster sustained cross-sector collaboration, not only within your own county network, but particularly within the 10 county networks that we're now expanding to, so that we can share best practices of things around the K-16 grant, like pathway implementation and student support strategies. And then I mentioned Dr. Kate Mahar, who will be bringing on to do some post-secondary task force pathway work, which will involve a lot of sharing of those best practices and scaling what's kind of already being done to other county networks that are needing them. So we're going to monitor that sub-grant process with the state. It's a lot different than, say, the McConnell Foundation, which when it comes to requirements that we're going to go over, terms and conditions, it's a lot more legalese, a lot more requirements on what's reported back and the outcomes. So we'll make sure that we oversee that. And as a region, we're meeting the requirements of the grant. And then we're going to prepare and submit the regional, annual, biannual, quarterly budget data and narrative reports back up to the state. And it's the Office of Public School Construction who is administrating this particular grant. So the main point of that slide was you're going to have support every step of the way between all of us on the backbone team. If you have questions, I'm your main point of contact. Shoot me an email. We'll make sure to get you an answer. And in the last slide, we're certainly going to go over some of the next steps of support that are along the way. But first, we'll go over terms and conditions of receiving the sub-grant. So many of you that are on this call have already received a draft version from us, which is really in turn from the state, right? What is the state requiring subgrantees to do? And so you've had a chance maybe to review that, but we're going to just go over some of the highlights of what the terms and conditions are. We'll be providing those subgrant awards. We don't know the final amount yet, but it's looking to be approximately $1 million over the next 4 years to each of our county networks, with the first year getting a bigger chunk of money. It's how the state designed it. So we are getting 60% and then 40% year one and 20% in the following 3 years. You all are up and running. You're the reason why this grant was awarded in phase 1, because we already have the framework of how things should be done, right? And we've proven through the grant application that each of our county networks and our framework has been working really well. So you don't have to do bylaws because you already have them, and you've already been named, and you have great names, by the way, Reach Higher Shasta, and I was spouting them off earlier. So fantastic names. Most of you already have a fiscal agent identifier, or certainly in the works of getting one. The MOU we're going to be sending out after the August Shasta College board meeting. So right now, the MOU is in review by the Shasta College administration team and legal team. We'll go to the Shasta College Board of Trustees for final approval in August, and then it will be signed by Shasta College and by the county fiscal agents. So it's really just the agreement between the two fiscal agents. And then also you're going to identify one or more K-16 county network liaisons. Likely right now that's going to be, but do let me know, the main coordinators of the existing contacts. So if that changes, we can certainly adapt and add more people. We know that I don't know if I imagine Gordon's on the call, but Gordon may not be the only sole contact for Reach Higher Shasta, for example. I see a lot of Reach Higher Shasta folks on the call. So we'll be adding on who the main contact should be, particularly for the K-16 grant. Annually before funding dispersed, which we're going to go over this today at a high level, is a work plan, which gives a lot of autonomy for the county networks to identify what they're going to be working on for the upcoming year, the annual budget, as well as submitting data reporting twice a year. It's an odd, there's lots of due dates with the state. It's annual, and then they have quarterly reports, and then data is 2 times a year. So let me go on. So our quarterly reports, we have an expenditure report, which Amy, our finance person, is going to go over in just a little bit of what that looks like. I know you've had like 10 emails. It's because the state keeps saying, releasing new information to us. And as we get more information, then we turn back down to the subgrants. And then narrative reporting, that template will be forthcoming, but really it's just reporting on your progress on the work plan that you're going to be doing. And then here's the quarterly report due dates. I'm sure we mentioned this, but I'm just mentioning it again, that the slides and all the documents that we're referring to in this presentation will be emailed out after the meeting to the folks on the call and the folks that were maybe not on the call, but were on the invitee list, but couldn't make it. So ongoing, you're going to continue basically doing what you're already doing as our county networks. You're going to have one representative on the North State Together board. You're going to continue to have 25% of your county executive teams made up of local employers. We identified education as a region to be one of the pathways. And with that, it really makes sense that educators are on your county networks. They already are, and they're a huge local employer for our region. So likely it would be hard to not get that 25% automatically made up given our two pathways of healthcare and education. So you're going to, as I mentioned earlier, support the implementation of californiacolleges.edu. That's a requirement of the grant. And we know once you hear more about californiacolleges.edu and the support around it, you will find that you're going to want to implement it, grant or no grant. Continue to actively engage with your county partners and stakeholders and community members around the K-16 goals and participate in county coordinator and regional K-16 meetings. You are already doing that, so just continue to do that with a focus also on K-16 grant. And facilitate and gathering of all pertinent and requested cradle to career data. Do not let that scare you. It won't be too much different than what you're already doing when it comes to cradle to career data with the added component of californiacolleges.edu. So now I'm going to hand it off to my finance extraordinaire, Miss Amy Speakman, who's going to go over the annual budget template.
Thank you, Jamie. So each county network, if we could pull up the annual budget template, that would be fantastic. So each county network will complete an annual budget for their anticipated expenditures for the year. The K-16 subgrants for year one will be approximately $390,000 to $400,000. We haven't received final approval from the state yet, so we don't have the exact numbers on that yet. So please complete your annual budget using the $390,000 amount. And then if we receive updated information from the state, we will request updated budgets from everyone. So on the form, the states provided us with a list of like expense categories, like main ones. So for personnel, you'll list the title of the staff, the FTE or the hours they're going to use for the year, the number of months they'll work, and then you'll provide a total salary amount or a total amount for salary and benefits. For all personnel, you can add as many lines as needed. For operating costs, you'll want to list as much information as you have on each of these categories for how the money is going to be spent. For travel, if you know what conferences people are going to attend, you'll list the conference and the number of people you plan on attending, what other travel costs you plan on using. Travel expenses are limited to the reimbursement rates used by the state of California. When we send the information from today's presentation, we will include some detailed information on travel and their reimbursement rates. So when planning your travel for the year, please review that before finalizing that. And then the rest of these, you'll include as much information as you have. If you know what consultants you're going to use, what student supports you're going to use, please provide as much information as possible with total amounts for the year. I do want to point out that we got confirmation from the state that we're not allowed to provide food or drink for training or professional development out of these funds. So I wanted to point that out. And then I also wanted to kind of touch on the re-grants. If you're going to be re-granting to any partner agencies, you'll want to include a line for each one of those partner agencies with kind of a description of the work they're going to complete and then a total amount for the year. With the restrictions on travel and then the no food or drink for events that we were not anticipating, Kevin and the team have secured additional funding of $10,000 per county outside of the K-16 funds to cover expenses that are not allowed under the grant. So if you're providing a training, you can provide food or drink out of that money, additional travel costs, or if you decide to send additional people to Strive and you feel that's a good way to use this money, that's definitely there. All of the $10,000 or any remaining amount you have after the end of the year can be carried forward indefinitely, which is important because we don't have confirmation on a dollar amount for unrestricted funds for years 2, 3, and 4, or even whether or not we'll be able to secure that unrestricted funding in future years. We're planning on it and hoping, but we don't have confirmation yet. And we will be sending the $10,000 in a separate check, and it's important to not commingle those funds with the case 16 money and to track it separately. If we could switch to the expenditure report, we'll just kind of briefly touch on that. This is the expenditure report we got from the state, and I think it's pretty straightforward. You'll complete the date, the payee, the warrant number, so the check number or the PO number associated with the expense. If your organization uses a budget code, please include that. And then you'll include the amount under the appropriate column going over. And then at the very end, you'll complete a description of the expense with as much detail as you have. If you're purchasing an item, what the item was, how many you purchased, if it was work done by one of your county networks, kind of what that work was. When submitting your expenditure reports at the end of each quarter, you will need to provide supporting documentation for all expenditures. This is because we need to be able to turn around and provide that documentation to the state. They are requiring that we have supporting documentation for every dollar spent out of this grant. If you are re-granting to partner agencies, I would have them fill out an annual budget, and then I would share this expenditure worksheet with them and have them use it so that when they report to you, you can just cut and paste into this sheet and when you submit it to us. And we do need to have all of your partner agencies submit their supporting documentation. So when you submit it to us, we can submit it to the state. So those were the two budget related templates I wanted to cover. If you have additional questions or want to get into the weeds on these reports, please reach out to Jamie and we'll schedule a follow-up meeting to answer any questions you have on the templates, documentation requirements, or any specific situations or questions you have. So thanks.
Thank you, Amy. I'm seeing all the questions. Keep them coming in the chat. If we don't answer them during the presentation portion, we'll be sure to answer those questions at the end of the presentation. So the annual or the county network annual work plan is where you're going to identify your particular county level milestones, activities, timelines, deliverables, and outcomes. So that's where while it's all within our overarching goals of the region. Tekla, I saw your question in the chat. While the overarching is healthcare, that does not mean that your county doesn't have a particular need that you want to focus on this year when it comes to social work and tying it with healthcare. From a grant perspective, we look very different to the state, and that's actually advantageous to our region because the state identified during the grant process what the region, the geography of the region. And so most of the regions that are set by the state are much, much smaller than ours. Some are even one county. And so for the county grant requirements, we have to have one K through 12, one community college, one UC, CSU, maybe forgetting something, a partner in there, implement these things. So not everyone necessarily has to do that. We're all working towards that goal, but if Trinity County needs to be focusing on the needs of their area, then absolutely that's where this work plan will come in, where you can identify your goals for the upcoming year. So this was drafted in response to the requirements, as I mentioned, outlined by the state, and will aid you in, it will aid us in submitting that region-wide quarterly reports that we refer to and annual reports back up to the state. So Each of you will submit an annual work plan and budget prior to receiving allocation. Normally, it will be submitted earlier than what it will be for this year. So this year is flexible because we're the state is late giving it to us, and then we're late giving it to you for the year, which runs July 1 through June 30th. We anticipate the work plan due. We haven't been given dates from the state, but normally due in that early June timeframe for the following year funding. This year it's flexible, but it's flexible as much as how quickly you want in turn to get the subgrant award. So I'm just going to open this template because for me, actually viewing the template before we go over it can like alleviate some, what does this really look like? How much is involved when it comes to the work plan? So I'm going to open that up really quickly. And by really quickly, I mean as soon as I find it. Okay. So this is the, again, built from what the state wants us to report back from them. Here's our overarching goals as a region, right? So similar to the work that we already do from cradle to career, we have our overarching regional goals, and then each county network identifies their own local goals to be working on. So annual work plan, you choose one or more pathways. Tekla, we can talk offline if these don't meet, but I would anticipate if you were going to be working for looking at social work, you would just check healthcare, and then we could, oh, healthcare is misspelled. I shouldn't probably point that out. I'll blame it on me because it was me. And then you'll identifying one or more recovery with equity strategies, and then your milestones or your goals. We're going to go over this, Billy, in a little bit more detail, but I just wanted you to see in relation to the template what he's going to be talking about. So here, milestones, here, activities under those milestones for the year, the timeline, outcomes, and deliverables. And that's it. So really, it's a 2-page document with that first cover page just kind of talking overall about what the grant is from a regional perspective. And so now I'm going to turn it over to Billy to just get into the weeds just a little bit about what the work plan looks like from a practical perspective. Billy?
Yeah, hopefully you guys see that we've tried to make it as easy as possible to complete. And like Jamie said, we're in an advantageous position because the state's not necessarily looking at us as individual counties, but as one region. And some of those regions that were awarded also just have one county. And so that allows a lot of flexibility when we're deciding which milestones to prioritize and how we're going to leverage the grant to pursue those priorities. And so by milestones, just wanted to provide a definition. We're talking about the overarching goals each county network will achieve through the K-16 subgrant by the end of each grant year. And so, for example, that might look like, and I'm not sure if they're popping up here on the screen while I'm speaking, it might be a little bit of a delay. But that might look like, for example, launching inclusive supports, including implementing, and you guys saw that in the strategies, right, that we wanted to prioritize with the K-16 grant. For example, implementation of cohort models for a county. Maybe one county would want to focus on early data warning systems, right, for students that are at risk of failure, et cetera. Providing increased job opportunities for work-based learning. Maybe that's an overarching goal, right, for a county network. Fully establishing at least one occupational pathway, right? That would be an awesome one because that's what we're required to do, right, with this funding. But at the same time, again, we're in an advantageous position because one county network works toward this, right? We have one connection to one educational institution that qualifies, right, as the minimum. But this is what we're all striving towards. And so we're asking for at least 2 milestones per year. And so you see spaces for 4, but we're asking just for 2 to focus on per year. Moving on to the activities, we're talking about the practical steps your county network will take to accomplish each milestone or overarching goal. Okay, so for example, maybe we're focusing on providing increased opportunities for work-based learning, internships, et cetera. That an activity to coincide with that would be hosting local college and career expos. We know that Trinity County just had an awesome one very recently. Meeting on a monthly basis with county networking, that's more so things that you're already doing, something to inform really our newer counties. But for example, hiring dedicated support personnel, right, would be an activity. And we're asking for at least one activity per milestone. And so you'll see under the activity heading, milestone 1, 2, 3, 4. And essentially we're asking, how are you going to accomplish those milestones? Timeline. An example would be weekly, monthly. We're going to have a monthly. We're going to have an annual College and Career Expo, for example. Okay. Moving on to our outcomes. We're defining outcomes as the anticipated outcome your county network expects resulting from achieving the overarching goal you're focusing on for year 1, year 2, etc. So for example, North State students, as a result of those College and Career Expos, are exposed to and educated about career opportunities and begin to develop career interests, right? Students experience streamlined college application and enrollment services if your focus is on orientation and improving those processes. And I think those will pop up soon. There might be a little bit of a delay, but at least one outcome per milestone. And so you'll see on the work plan document, milestone under outcome, milestone 1, 2, 3, 4, really simple. What are the outcomes of each milestone? Then deliverables, we're talking about the measurable benefits that are going to be realized. So for example, X% of high school graduation rates in the county are going to be increased. X% of high schools are actively utilizing californiacolleges.edu in our county. County network team comprised of 25% employers is fully established. You guys are already well on your way doing that. Or for example, post-secondary enrollment rates increased by a certain percentage. And so we're asking for at least one deliverable per milestone. And so hopefully, as you can see with those examples, you guys can feel free to adopt these or focus on your own priorities, tweak it as necessary. But essentially, this is an opportunity to report the awesome progress and the success we have already been implementing and ways that we're going to leverage the K-16 grant to expand those. And so next, I'm going to pass it on to James, who's going to cover the data plan report portion.
Hi, everyone. So there's still some unknowns when it comes to the data that will be required by the state. This slide represents 3 areas that we know data will be collected with some high-level descriptions of what will be required. We're currently working with our contact at the state to get questions answered so we can get better information out to you. But what we know at this point is that there are 3 areas of data that we'll be working on with you. First one is specified metrics. These are metrics that the state is requiring. There's custom metrics, and these are the metrics that we will be coming up with in conjunction with you guys based on our grant application and our specified goals and activities, and then the activities you're working on that you adopt. Then the last one is CCGI adoption, and this is the onboarding and implementation of californiacolleges.edu by our high schools, and is a requirement if you partner with a high school, i.e. give them money. If you're unsure of what that is, let me know and reach out to me and we'll have a talk about it and I can get you more information. Some examples of each of these are on the slides, but like I said, we're working with our contact at the state to get more information and get you a template. We'll be guiding you and assisting you with your data tracking and reporting. And we may find that some metrics I can gather on my own and report on your behalf, but there's going to be several, depending on your pathways, that you'll have to provide data to me on so that we can get that into our report twice a year. But I'll be with you every step of the way and making sure that that happens and assisting you on that. We'll provide a reporting template and go over that with you. And once we know more about it and more about the specifics that the state's asking for and what we need to do, Jamie and Billy will be reaching out to you guys to set up some meetings to talk about data and tracking and things like that to help you with your work plans and things like that. So in the meantime, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me or pop them in the chat and we'll answer them as best we can. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, James. Before we get to questions, I'm going to just briefly go over next steps. And the reason why I'm doing that is to ensure I don't want you to think that's it, we get off the call. And there's no follow-up to some of the things that we've covered. So as I mentioned, for year 1 funding, most of those the bylaws you've already completed, so you're well on your way. You'll be getting the MOU after the August Shasta College board meeting to have your fiscal agent sign. Terms and conditions, which you've seen a draft of, you'll be getting a finalized version very soon, along with all of these documents to sign and return. Year one work plan, which we touched base on a little bit. There'll be follow-up sessions if you need them, both one-on-one, or if you find it advantageous to come together like we have in the past as a 5-county network to kind of work through those together and see what other folks are doing. We can do that as well. Your year one budget, and then those are the templates we're going to follow up with to make sure you have the latest and greatest. And then, whoops, subgrant allocations, we want to reallocations. We want to make sure that, I know Amy's highlighted this, but I want to stress this. Odds are you're going to be re-granting this money to many of your partners. The state has said that all subgrants and then sub-grants underneath those reallocations must follow the same terms and conditions, budget, all of the requirements we talked about today have to be followed down to whatever level are re-granted or reallocated. So we really recommend taking the templates that we're going to provide to you, and we can provide it not just if in PDF form, but make sure you have the original documents so that you can update them at a county level for your county to then partner with, and making sure that you're getting what you need to report back from them, and then back to us, back to the state. So we'll making sure we get you those templates to use. And then again, upcoming county network support with the work plan data, budget guidance, ongoing support throughout the term of the grant. And then I'll talk about Strive Together in just a minute after we go over some questions. So let's look through the chat and see where we're at. If somebody wants to jump in from my team, that if there is a question in there that you have the answer to and want to go off mute and answer it for them, that'd be great while I get caught up. Yes, so I'm seeing some question more about implementation of the pathways. Just as an aside, what I'm glancing at frequently, we will be having more of that regional contacts created with Dr. Kate Mahar and a lot of our other partners in the region on post-secondary pathway work, which I'm sure Crosswalk will be a part of that. I saw Kevin, sorry, go ahead and jump in as I'm catching up.
Yeah, I just in general, the parameters around the grant are very broad. So it's not a, they did not provide us any roadmap that we would have to use. The only thing that they referenced was just the previous, equity report that they had put out. Other than that, I think that there are things through CTE pathways, connections to community colleges, UCs and CSUs that would fulfill the agreement of the grant. And just to reiterate, I'm not saying it's going to be easy. That's not what I'm saying. But what I am saying is, back to Billy's point originally, if one county is meeting the goals of one section of the grant, that counts for the entire region. And so that doesn't mean other 9 counties should pause what they're doing. It just means that we have an opportunity to really brag about all the individual work and combine that to kind of a regional report. So I think it's, everything. I can list something that each one of your counties right now in this meeting is doing that we could fill those reports out this week, and it would meet the conditions of the grant.
And Tanya, I see your question in the chat. Great question. She's asking, is Q1 reports due this 9/15? She saw that screen and went, "Ooh, I have a due date already. I don't even have money." So you don't even have money. And work plans and all of that. We anticipate, if you are funded beforehand, which means you've completed all of the MOU and gotten all that, which I would imagine Advancing Modoc Youth will be able to do in plenty of time, we will cut you a check. The answer is yes, but also recognizing that you may not even have any expenditures yet, little to report. And same with the narrative, like, here's my progress. My progress is we've identified our work plan. So it's yes, it is, but not as intense as one may think, because there's going to be minimal to report on. So.
Hey, my keyboard isn't working. So I hope it's okay if I just speak.
Speaking is allowed, Tekla.
Okay, good. Yeah, thanks. Hey, and sorry to cut you off, Kevin, but this is back to the implementation of the pathways piece. So I understand that, you know, if someone else is doing something, we might not have to do that same thing. Love that. Are there details on what implementation is supposed to mean? You know, does that mean I can do a work-based learning program? Does that mean I have to have developed 2 CTE courses? Are there details about, you know, sort of implementation and what that would look like?
That's a great question, Tekla, and we'll work alongside you, but that's what that work plan is. So you're identifying what it is in the work plan. Yep. And of course, you know, we can't go off the wall and something unrelated to the K-16 grant overall goals, but there's a lot of autonomy on what your team, your cross-sector team up in Trinity identify to work on. But great question.
Also wanted to comment just very quickly on the CCGI. Jim had another meeting. He let me know that he had to make, so he left. But the language around the CCGI is such that, you know, they want us and participating high schools to adopt it, but it's not a you will do this tomorrow. In other words, a year one plan could be for a subcommittee, for instance, at a county network level to investigate what it would take to implement CCGI at that, you know, at the county level or at a high school level. And then, you know, as those recommendations come back for the county teams to evaluate the feasibility of it as such. And so as we start to collect more troubleshooting ideas, that maybe there is something that's a hang up for a lot of high schools in our entire region, that gives us as an opportunity as a region to come together to talk about in the summit. Is there something that our board can do to alleviate some of those concerns? Is there something else that we can do to, you know, maybe schools want to partner on something like this, or maybe there's software that somebody has that they created. There's all sorts of things that we can do. So I just wanted to, even though, yeah, it's listed as a requirement, it's not such that it needs to be implemented ASAP. There is built-in time to explore what it would take and to review it, and then to see what it would look like for us to move forward. So I know that's going to be a big carry at Reach Higher for Jim's high schools, for instance. But there's built-in conversation and planning time for that.
Hey, Kevin, is there going to be time?
And I also, sorry, Tekla, and this is my own, I'm not speaking on behalf of NST. I'm not speaking on behalf of anybody but just Kevin. But in the conversations that I've heard at the state level, my feeling was such that I would not be surprised in 3 or 4 years this was an optional software for our high schools to use in the state. I think my personal thoughts were this was a soft rollout to try to get high schools involved in this, because what they're trying to solve, the overall problem they're trying to solve, is they want a common, unique numbering system for our students right now. We have huge data integrity issues because we can't track students from our high schools to our community colleges to our universities. And so because we don't have a common course numbering or a common student identification numbering system. So that ultimately is what this is supposed to do. But it does have some additional benefits, such as, you know, assistance and supplemental material for career counseling, et cetera. So anyway, sorry, Tekla, go ahead.
No, that's okay. I was just wondering if there is like a, I don't know, a plan for support. Should I like sign up for this? How do I view eyes on that? Is that part of the plan I need to work out with my high schools? Is that something that NST can help give us a little more, I don't know, a viewer, some kind of a training friendly, something like that, so that we know what we're going to be asking schools to do exactly?
So I'll take that one, Tekla. So before we applied for the grant, we partnered with CCGI to do some info sessions that they did for us, and we've recorded one of those that is pretty good that I can send you a link to that recording. But also to CCGI has been really good about meeting with folks and doing presentations, and they've offered up several times that if you have a high school that wants to talk about it, they will talk with them. I will help facilitate that, but CCGI has been phenomenal to work with, and I'll send you I'll send you the links to their website so you can poke around on there. But if you want to set something up specifically with them, I can certainly help you with that.
Thanks, James.
So NST team, I have one quick question that may not be able to be answered here, but if we look at our first year as a really solid planning year to bring in our partners, to develop the plan, asset map, what's currently existing in the county and what needs to be improved and linked, beyond what we did in a very quick turnaround for the grant, that could be an appropriate, correct?
Yes, absolutely.
And
Right.
then, okay, and then a follow-up question to that is there's no way we will expend probably the amount that is slated for that first year. If our budget doesn't meet the level of the income for that first year, I noticed it can be rolled over, but are we gonna get any pushback from the state if we can't, do a big chunk? I see, at least in our county, more of a second year being able to do that big chunk, because then we'll have our partners in place, we'll have gotten agreements in place for CCGI and training and so forth.
So the
I'm
money,
expecting- oh, go ahead.
can you roll over? Oh, go ahead, Amy. Amy, please go ahead.
I was just going to say that the funds, we are expecting them to be able to roll over from year to year. So if you don't spend the full amount the first year, that will be carried forward in addition to your second year funding, third year, fourth year. So yeah.
Yeah.
Perfect.
And we're gonna, in our reporting, the little caveat to that is in our reporting back to the state from a regional perspective, we'll be providing that delicate balance because we were awarded because phase 2, remember, awardees are planning and phase 1 is ready to go. But with the fact our model is a 10 county model, we'll have enough to pull from to show that we're rocking and rolling, whether it's with CCGI or pathways that are already in existence, let's say at Shasta College or whatever. So we'll be able to prove that we are worthy of the phase 1 award when it comes from infrastructure, but yet being able to plan and scale, which is exactly what you're talking about, Marie.
Okay, and then there is one more piece to this. I'm part of, as are most of the colleges that are part of this regional North State Together region for healthcare. It's the Far North Healthcare Alliance Collaborative, and I'm on it. Kathy and her team at TAMA just was put on it. I think Wendy attends regularly. I just would put it out there. That might be a great partner organization to help us scale it up pretty quickly. I think all of the nursing directors from all of the colleges that, Shasta, State College of the Siskiyous, Lassen, trying to think of what else, Feather River are on it off the top of my head.
Christina, I see your great question. I meant to bring this up about K16 and the McConnell Foundation funding reporting. So the budgets will align perfectly. So as we've talked about, we moved transition to the K16 funding. So those budgets will be exactly what you'll use back to North State Together. And we are in conversations about how we can kind of merge. We have a little time because the McConnell Foundation next report isn't due until December, but how we can merge some of that. But from the most part, we would imagine that the McConnell Foundation reporting template would feed into the K16 narrative report template or vice versa, because it's really just expanding on your highlights for the year. And while the McConnell Foundation is a little bit more broad, so we have Cradle to Career and all the efforts that you're doing, and then K16 dives into a little more specifics about what K16 outcomes and deliverables you're doing. So, but budget, same. Just want to call out Wendy's what she put in the chat. That's a great point. I know we're aware of a lot of various data sources, and as James builds that out with the data lead at the state. We will certainly be reaching out from our perspective. And then as the counties do their own data plans, I would imagine they'll take you up on some of that as well. 10,000 replacing McConnell. Tanya, great question. So the $10,000 that Kevin and Amy are referring to has been a scramble of the food and drink problem, right? The state says, this is what you can spend and not spend. And we had no idea. We thought, well, for sure, we would be able to have a regional event and go from 8 to 5 all day and, you know, provide a biscuit or something. But turns out not so much. We even asked the question twice in 2 different ways and still got the no. However, Kevin really worked with Shasta College administration to find some more innovative funding and flexible funding for this year so that we could at least get through this coming year of, you know, providing that food and drink or whatever that's needed on the county network level when it comes to implementation. Also, Amy, I think, mentioned on this call about Cal HR and other requirements. So there are other travel requirements, restrictions on the funding, hotels and otherwise. So we'll be sending that out. And that's what that funding could be used. Like the first X amount of dollars of a hotel is reimbursed, but not all of the funding for a hotel would be reimbursed. So that's where that $10,000 would come into play. Any other questions? And I could have missed something in the chat. I haven't been able to quite keep up. I've got some direct messages too. So if I miss anything, please.
Got a quick question on, so with that, the bylaws, the 25% local employer representation, I think that's absolutely a best practice, but is that something that's also spread out through the region or that each county must follow?
That's great. So I think I see Kevin jumping in from, you know, Billy and Kevin have all mentioned this, like how the state sees us as North State Together. We have a board at North State Together. We'll be meeting that requirement. So check in essence. However, we are asking all of our new counties to meet that requirement within their bylaws of 25%. And then all of our existing county networks as well to look at that as best practice. However, as I think I mentioned, is we chose, the region chose education as one of our pathways. And so educators sitting on your board already help make up that employer perspective. I can't imagine knowing the executive teams. I don't think I have the latest for each of our teams, but given past history with each of your networks, that you are already meeting that 25% local employer goal. And I like that, Marie, of looking to update your bylaws to actually, in fact, state it. I think it's good practice with this grant or without to have local employer stated as being a part of the collective impact team on your county levels.
I can field Christina's question in regards to McConnell. So we met with the McConnell Foundation prior to submission of this grant application, and they were great as always. They had said if we were unsuccessful in receiving this grant, that they would continue to support the counties as they were. However, they felt if we were successful in receiving what we thought was 20 million at the time, ended up being 18 million, that it would be appropriate for the counties to be financially supported through that grant at a much higher rate than McConnell was doing. And then what we would do is then push those McConnell dollars forward towards the conclusion of this 4-year grant. So this is where, and it's kind of part of the reason why we decided for this first meeting to do separate meetings with the new counties and the existing counties, because your situation is a little bit different, and you're not going to see me probably go into a lot of in-depth when we're all together. But the original 5 counties are in a much better situation, because if these funds go away after the 4 years, McConnell will still be supplementing and supporting the grants, whereas the new five counties basically have 4 years. And the problem with that is, going back to the question that was asked earlier, it's a lot of money in 4 years, and to an LA district, it may not be that much, but is it, you know, is it wise to spend $1 million in Sierra County within 4 years, where they might be able to say, hey, we can spend 300,000 and we can take this 4-year grant and make it an 8-year grant. There is a no cost extension clause at the end of that. We'll worry about that when it comes, when we get to close to year 4, to see what everybody's balances are looking like. But it's a good problem to have, but it is an issue. You're getting a lot of money in 4 years. And there are differences. Sierra is different than Butte, right? MODOC may be different than Shasta. And so, so anyway, we're in a good situation with the original 5 counties, because McConnell has still, even though they were clear from the beginning that they want this to be a sustainable effort, they still offered that. And then we'll see what happens at the state level in 4 years. The recession's coming. I don't know if we can count on any additional money. However, if we can report back some big wins through this grant, and then finally, we don't have to get into it now, the potential of SURF dollars that are coming, and using the North State Together network and allocating some of those funds outward may be another source of revenue that we would see. So hopefully that answers your question, Christine.
Yes, thank you, Kevin.
So any other questions? The recording, the slide deck will probably come out first, and then we'll follow up with some more information at the beginning of next week regarding next steps. For this county network, as Kathy pointed out, are we meeting? Yes, we plan on meeting after this initial informational call of having every month, instead of the coordinator meetings, which we can decide whether that's in place of those coordinator meetings we were holding on a every other month basis, or in addition to. We may want to hold space for the normal cradle to career work we were doing for that coordinator meeting, but then meet monthly directly regarding K-16. I also imagine that monthly meeting with K-16 initially may involve certain folks and evolve over time as your work gears towards the K-16 grant specifically. So I see some folks on the call, which maybe wouldn't be on a normal cradle to career call, but for your county network, but definitely want to be involved at your county network for K-16. So yes, the answer is monthly meetings with K-16, and then bringing in folks that may help with the implementation from a regional perspective, some of which were talked about either in chat or mentioned by folks on the call, some regional partners. So let me look at chat. Any other questions? I like the monthly, me too. Not just because I get to see all your smiling faces. Yes, Gordon.
When is I have those Reach Higher Shasta executive committee here. I gotta chime in, earn my pay. When is the Shasta College board meeting scheduled? So like what I'm asking is, you know, do we rush and then we're held because then that goes back for review again after their board meeting? What's kind of their timeline?
We anticipate, because the Shasta College board is aware of the grant award and the overall terms and conditions. So we don't foresee, once we present that MOU to the board, it having any changes. So I believe that it's scheduled for August 13th, Kevin. And so as soon as we have that out, it'll be signed and distributed to the county networks for signature. So absolutely work on all the other steps for your first year grant funding allotment, and then that MOU, as soon as we have it, will be in your hands to have your county fiscal agents and the county network coordinator. So Gordon, you hold a lot of power. You are the chair of the executive team, can sign that MOU along with the fiscal agent.
Thank you.
In fact, I would also, we haven't really thought about it, but I think Jamie and Billy, if you guys are okay with it, we should have the final draft of our MOU ready at the beginning of August for the August 10th board meeting. I don't see any harm of sending you all that MOU draft that you could then share with your county network teams, as long as they all understand it's a draft. If the board changes anything to it, we'll have to send an updated one. But that might assist us in saving some time if you could review it earlier, and then we will give you the thumbs up on August 11th saying the board approved it as presented, or the board approved it with these modifications. And then that might assist your timeline in case you had, I mean, it would be horrible if you had a meeting scheduled for the 7th and you had nothing to review and then you had to gather everybody back again. But then I think the deadline, you know, it's not a deadline, but I think what we were hoping to do was get all of the funds allocated to the counties the end of August, beginning of September. And that would give us time to get the terms and conditions signed and the MOU.
Excellent. Thanks, Kevin.
Yeah.
And the work plan, right? We have to get the work plan done before we receive those funds.
Yep.
That's correct.
All right, anything else? I'm sure there's a lot else, but that's where the follow-up meetings will come in. So I'll be reaching out to the county coordinators individually to see how best to approach, whether it be your work plan, the budget, and where you're at, what works best for you. And then also we'll be setting up those monthly K-16 meetings that in the beginning might be more of a logistic standpoint, and then implementation as we roll out. So
can I just ask, since we're missing so many people this summer that might be key to planning later around that work plan, is it okay if that work plan is adjusted then 6 months into this or 4 months into this, after we truly do get to start meeting more with people that
yeah, I think once we get into looking at the work plan a little bit further at the county network level, you'll find that it's very broad overall goals. So it doesn't have to be so nitty gritty that you're tied into something. That being said, this one did not feed back straight up to the state. And so yes, in future years, it feeds right back up to the state. This one did not. So you're fairly safe in you know, working towards your goals and reporting them out a little bit more loosely the first year, but within the work plan guidelines that you'll come up with. So we can work with that, Kathy, to make sure that it's as your teams come back together, that you're not leaving anybody out of the conversation as you plan. And it may be like Billy went over, that you only have to pick 2 milestones. Maybe that's smart, knowing that as your team goes on, you want to work on 3 and 4. And you can always do more. So maybe we'll pick broad ones for you as your team develops back up in the fall, so that you can identify more specific things. And then with that, I will let everyone enjoy the last 30 minutes. I'm impressed. Go team. And then if I can have Kathy and Tanya and who did else did I say? Gordon, you were good. I'm going to say that out loud for your executive team. You're amazing. You don't need to stay on. Did that
I'm
work?
out of here.
Okay.
Thank you, guys.
Take care, everyone.